Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. Today I have a very special guest, someone who actually lives right down the street from me that I go for walks with all the time. A very important person in my life, very close friend and mentor, sort of like a big brother to me. He is a New York Times bestselling author. He's one of the leading mindset and behavior experts in the world, and he's the creator of NeuroGym, the founder of NeuroGym, and the author of Innercise. So he is someone who he's going to be talking to us today about how to manage your mindset, how to manage your emotions, how to manage your brain and operate your brain during times of stress, which of course we're all in right now amidst this pandemic. I want to say on a personal note, John has been a mentor of mine for about 10 years now, since what seems like a lifetime ago. It seems like I was a little kid back when I first met him. And he's been really instrumental in my own personal growth. And I say this with the highest level of literalness. I cannot think of anybody that I've ever known that is more qualified to speak on this subject. And I'll just say a couple of personal stories that I remember from many years ago, when I was in my mid-20s, when I was John's personal trainer at the time. And I would show up to his house, and there were some mornings that, he would show up. I will say he showed up to work out no matter what, every day without exception. But there were a couple times in particular during this period of time where some interesting things happened. One was the stock market crash of 2008. And another one was one of his businesses at the time. His business partner, I think, had a stroke, and he was the main guy operating that business, and just chaos in the business. And both times amidst just terrible life-altering circumstances, John showed up to his workouts, and he showed up with a smile, and he was happy. And I remember saying to him, "How are you happy right now?" Like I was baffled as to how he could be managing his emotions like that and be in a positive emotional state. And he said to me, "What good would it do if I was stressed and angry right now?" And I went, "Huh, that's interesting. Never thought of things that way." But, again, I just really, this man walks the walk, and he is a true expert. So, John, welcome. I feel like I haven't seen you in ages because we're on lockdown, but it's such a pleasure to get to hang out with you virtually.
Great to hang out with you virtually as well. And literally, I could walk from my house to Ari's in 3 minutes, yeah. And we're walking slow. Yeah. So it's great to be on. It's great to be on, just, having a chance to really talk about what people are really feeling and experiencing right now. In this hopefully once in a lifetime, pandemic, and then to give people some tools that they can use. So what I call our Innercises. You help me train my physical body and my internal organs, and I'll help people with their brain and Innercises to strengthen their mindset and emotional skills today.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me about broad overview of what's going on right now. Obviously, there's no way nobody's not aware of the pandemic that we're all dealing with. It's on the news 24/7. And that's part of the problem, is that we're all hooked to the news on the TV, on the internet. We're reading about, what's the latest death toll? What's the latest bad news of, how many people are in the ventilator and the hospital overwhelm, and just the chaos and the fear that's happening right now. What do you think, on a very broad level, what do you think are the biggest things for people to understand right now as far as how to operate their brain?
Sure. So first and foremost, everybody is 100% human and normal. Let me explain what I mean by that. If we, forget about, our friendships and our families and all that stuff for just a moment, and let's just think of our brain. There's about 107 billion humans that have lived on planet Earth. We've been walking for about 2.5 million years, from Homo erectus to now, for 2.5 million years. And our brain has been developing for that amount of time, first with what a lot of people consider the reptilian brain, then the mammalian brain, then the neocortex, the logical part of the brain. But the most developed part of our brain is that part of our brain that is focused on 4 things in this order. 1, survival above all else. 2, avoidance of pain or discomfort. 3, conservation of energy. 4 is gaining of pleasure. So let's talk about number 1 first. When our brain senses that there's a predator, it goes on flipping high alert. Cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, high alert that danger is around. Well, we have this thing called coronavirus, COVID-19, which is a real threat. So imagine being in an environment where there's a constant feeling that there's a predator that may get you. That is going to put your brain on high alert 24/7, and you are going to be drawn towards anything and everything and anyone and everyone who's talking about it where the threat is real and imminent to you. So number 1, high alert. Number 2, if you happen to get the virus, there's a real chance, okay, that death is there. Right? Now, of course, there are certain people in certain categories that are more susceptible or prone to dying. I get that. But the very fact that the threat is not just out there for everybody else, but you, the threat is real for you, and it's an enemy you can't see. So now we have unpredictability. Now we're not in control. Now the threat is real. And now there's all this shit and misinformation that is confusing us and creating chaos in our minds, in the market, between friends, between smart people. One expert says this, another expert says this. And in a brain that wants to conserve energy, in the brain that wants predictability, we're activating what I call is the Frankenstein brain.
What is that?
And the Frankenstein brain is the part of our brain, the right prefrontal cortex, that's tied into our memory bank that basically goes like this. What if I get the virus? What if I die? What if I lose money? What if I lose my job? Or what if I lost my job and I can't pay my rent, my mortgage, I don't have enough food? What if, negative. So we are biologically wired to ask that question at a conscious and subconscious level, which means what? Which means that we are consistently flooding our bloodstream with these stress hormones, the stress energy that is going to keep us anxious and stressed. And that is the same circuit that is causing our fear. Whether the fear is rational or irrational is irrelevant. If it's possible, we are going to focus on that because survival and avoidance of pain and discomfort is number 1 and number 2 in our brain's hierarchy of performance. And when that happens and we don't catch ourselves in these, what I call these disempowering, destructive, negative loops that we go into, then all of a sudden that pattern becomes a habitual pattern. And since the brain wants to conserve energy, it says, let me make this destructive pattern automatic for you, and I'm going to keep you hyper focused on all of the negative stuff. There's what's actually happening to people who don't understand how to use their brains better, even though it is the trillion-dollar organism that you own, but you don't have the user's manual for. But we're going to give you some tools today.
Yeah. This may be a bit of a digression, but it's something that's been on my mind. I want to mention it to get your thoughts. This is something that I would probably say to you in person if we were going for a walk, which we haven't done in a few weeks now. There's the famous sort of cliche of, humans are constantly at war with one another. We're fighting. We're fractured as a species. And I forget where this comes from. Maybe but maybe Star Trek or something like that. But what if there's some other force, like aliens show up, in this giant spaceship, and they're here to destroy all of humankind and take over the planet? Then all of humanity would unite, and we would all join forces and connect and become one to fight against this threat. What's really interesting to me right now is we actually have that scenario in the sense that we have this threat that we're all fighting against, and yet we have not united. We have become even more fractured. I mean, the amount of fighting that I see among people on social media and arguing and, you're wrong, you're an idiot, insults, I mean, nasty stuff.
Very nasty.
It seems like we went the total other direction. There's this big threat that we all should be uniting, and yet we're fighting with each other more than ever. Just curious to hear if you have any insight into that.
So whenever we agree that we have a common enemy, we unite. Whenever we disagree on the enemy or the severity of the enemy, we fracture. Because now we cannot, if there were aliens that came to Earth, we could see them, we can understand, holy mackerel, if they got here, okay, they're smart enough to wipe us out. Why are they here, friendly or foe? But with this silent, invisible enemy that looks like to some people the flu or SARS or H1N1 or the measles or chickenpox, and most people don't have the knowledge or the education on what it really is or the ability, and you and I have talked about this many a time, to be able to research the research and to decipher the real stuff from the bullshit. And you and I, just in the last few days, we've been having this dialogue, about different articles and different experts and what about vaccines and what about not. And most people will not take the time to question the experts, which they should, because there's plenty of experts who are wrong, and make some smart decisions for themselves based on, okay, here's me, here's what I can do for me, for my family, for my environment, that's going to keep me mentally, emotionally, physically, and let's even say financially safe. And what happens is when we start to look outside of ourselves to opinions, and people are sharing their opinions, I always tell people, forget about opinions. Everybody has an opinion, and most people don't understand the difference between an opinion and expertise. And even experts who are sincere could be sincerely wrong. So the question is,
and add to that, there's a genuine lack of good data right now. So
Correct.
Even the experts are speculating to a large degree.
Yeah, the experts are speculating because this is new, right? This is a new combination of something that we haven't seen. And so let's leave all of the conspiracy theories away from now, where it was started, why it was started, how it was started, for what let's leave that away from now. Let's just deal with this virus. And here's what we know. It's dangerous. It spreads pretty fast. It can kill us. What are some decisions that we can make just to be safe like that? Let's start with the fundamental basics first. Then we can get into levels of complexity, okay, and arguments. But if we want to be safe right now, there are some protocols that I've taken, that you've taken, that certain towns, cities, countries have taken.
I'm with you. I have my garage filled with toilet paper right now. I'm way ahead of you. That's what you're referring to, right? Is just stock up on toilet paper?
That's one thing we're probably short of here. And the stuff that I was able to get in the last couple of weeks, it's not, I don't know what it is, but certainly isn't toilet paper because it's falling apart in my hands.
Now I'm afraid you're going to break into my garage and steal my toilet paper.
I'll just ask nicely. I'll just ask nicely. But
so what are these things that we should be doing right now?
Well, whenever we're in this reactive, I'm going to go back to Frankenstein's brain, we're disempowered. We are usually behaving irrationally, sometimes destructively. We revert back to our old patterns of how we do things and the highest level of skill that we've been trained to do things at. But we also have another part of our brain, which is the left prefrontal cortex, which I like to consider as the Einstein brain. So, what is Albert Einstein known for? Well, he's known for being pretty smart and having some deductive reasoning abilities of, should I try this? Should I try that? What about this? What about that? Does this make sense? Does that make sense? But he's also really good at using his imagination. And so what if we could deactivate Frankenstein in order to activate Einstein? We know when we are anxious, stressed, when we don't have enough sleep, which you taught me to get lots of sleep many, many years ago, which has been awesome. When we aren't healthy and our immune systems aren't strong and we're disrupting all of our rhythms, then we know that our sympathetic nervous system is on high alert. And that means that we're not breathing fully. We're not expanding our lungs. Our heartbeat is going too fast. Our blood pressure is elevated. Our sympathetic nervous system is activated and releasing those stress hormones. What we also know is that we can shift from that part of our brain to our parasympathetic part of our brain. And one of the first Innercise I've been teaching all of my clients, every walk of life, is doing this. And I teach them, put your hand over your belly button. Okay, one hand over your belly button, one hand just around your heart. And if you take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, very, very slowly, and make sure that your belly button extends, diaphragmatic breathing first. So slow breath in, and then fill out your lungs or fill up your lungs and hold your breath for 3 seconds. And then breathe it out like you're breathing out through a straw for as slowly as you can. When you do that 6 times, I call it take 6, calm the circuits. So take 6, calm the circuits is really, really simple. But what it does is it deactivates that stressful part of your brain. And it activates that ability to be calm so you can respond. And in a calm, responsive way, you can now retrain your brain to still receive or perceive the same stimuli, but now in a calm way, you can direct your attention. And that's when I usually will tell people, now do Innercise number 2, which is called AIA, A-I-A, which stands for awareness, intention, action. Now, awareness of what? Well, I want to be aware of what have I been thinking or what am I thinking? Awareness of your thoughts first. Your feelings and emotions, are they constructive? Are they destructive? Are they empowering you? Are they confusing you? Are they making you more stressed or less stressed? So awareness of thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and behaviors. And we do this in a pure state of awareness without any judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification. Zero judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification. Why? Because we know that if we can be mindful without labeling or giving any judgment on ourselves or what's happening, then we can set an intention. Well, my intention is to be calm while this is all going on. My intention is to stay focused. My intention is to be healthy. My intention is to fill in the blank. And then if we just take one small action step, one, not big ones, one small action steps towards our intention, now what have we done? One, we've deactivated that fear center in our brain. We have deliberately shifted over to the genius part of our brain that can observe and direct and command and be in control. And now I've recreated a neural pathway that will empower me versus allowing a disempowering pattern, whether it's thoughts, emotions, or behaviors, to reinforce itself and become a habitual destructive pattern.
Beautifully said. So is this a practice, what you're just describing? Like, is this a practice that takes a few minutes, or is this sort of like an overarching framework for sort of how one should operate their brain, like in a big picture way? Do you get what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
Like, can we practice what you're just saying in the next 5 minutes, or like, is it a bigger picture sort of paradigm shift?
Great. So if we get back to neuroscience and the science of neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to either wire or rewire itself, if people don't naturally do this, that means they are not wired or conditioned to do this. You know, when you shared earlier that I was calm, you know, no matter what was happening outside of me, that's as a result of practicing to be calm every single day. So I practice every single day awareness and mindfulness and calmness and the ability to be able to respond instead of react automatically. So imagine if you're out of shape physically and you decide, you know what, I've been following Ari and the Energy Podcast, and I'm sleeping well. I'm taking, you know, all of the Energenesis products, and I'm feeling good. I want to start to exercise, or I want to get better at exercise. If you were totally out of shape and you just started walking for 3 minutes a day, would you be in better shape 100 days from now?
Absolutely.
Of course you would be. Why? Because the act of exercising changes your brain, changes your muscles, changes you. Well, when you Innercise every day, a little bit each day, you practice your breathing to be able to be calm. There's something, actually, let me finish this and I'll share with you another Innercise called Flip the Switch Actor Studio. But when we practice being mindful, when we practice being aware of our emotional state, and what I tell all of my clients and students around the world, put a little timer on your phone or your computer for it to go off every hour. And if every hour all you did was do some breathing exercises, and all you did was the exercise that I showed you, the Innercise I showed you, and as you did one of these per hour, you said, I breathe in calmness and certainty. I breathe out stress and uncertainty. If on the inhale, I breathe in calmness and uncertainty, and on the exhale, you breathe out whatever you want to breathe out. I breathe out fear. I breathe out stress. I breathe out anxiety. The very fact that you do it every hour, you're training your brain to be in the desired state. The very fact that you are speaking words activates the neurons in your brain that are associated with those words and those feelings. So you are now directing your brain and managing your emotions deliberately. If you did that every hour for 3, 4, 5 hours, for 2 to 3 minutes, because of the science of neuroplasticity and because of Hebb's law of the neurons that fire together, wire together, now you can start to develop a habit of being in that state. And we know from some of the research at University of London, that 66 days to 365 days is how long it takes to develop a new habitual pattern that overrides an old pattern. So not 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, 12 days, 66 days. All of my students commit to one thing together, 100 days of doing their Innercises to change their brain, to create a new neural pattern that is an empowering, constructive, positive one, as they choose to release the disempowering, destructive, possibly negative ones.
I had for 2 or 3 weeks as this pandemic began, like I would describe it almost as an addiction to the latest, data that's coming out and the news, and also an addiction to debating other people that I perceive
including me.
Well, we debated a few specific points, but there's some people who get nasty, like some, even for example, like posting John Ioannidis, the Stanford researcher who's one of the most respected scientists in the world. I shared a video with his take on the situation because I thought it was an interesting take. And I thought, this is like I said, one of the most respected scientists in the world with a very, reasonable, sensible analysis of an interpretation of the data. There's some debate among some experts, but he has his interpretation. And I shared it. And I had not a lot of people, but maybe 2 people who just came after me and said, he's a hack. This is not a real scientist. He's trying to kill his parents. And who are you? How dare you post this information? I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And so like it just became kind of an interesting phenomenon for me to understand. And I've done a PhD program in clinical psychology. That's an area of interest of mine. And so I like to explore how people think about things and the cognitive biases that lead them to arrive at certain conclusions. So I started to explore, to debate, to ask questions, to see how people are exploring. And I got kind of addicted to it for a few weeks there, but it ultimately consumed so much of my mental energy and time and put me in kind of a stressed, like anxious state. Like I would respond to somebody and then I'd have to wait for them to respond and, be engaged in these debates for several days. There's like an addiction to negative emotional states, like an addiction to doing things which are actively kind of sabotaging your own health and happiness.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, I think a lot of people are probably in that state right now, maybe debating like I was, but certainly addicted to the news and maybe just the anxiety and fear of constantly watching the news, hoping that there's going to be some kind of positive update. But what would you say to people who are in that state right now, and how could they recognize it? How could they work their way out of it?
I got so much to say about that, but I want you to just be aware, right? When you study addictions, whether it's gamblers in Las Vegas, or crack addicts or cocaine addicts or sex or alcohol or pills, it doesn't make a difference. You'll see the greatest spike of dopamine in the anticipation of the behavior. Not the actual behavior at all. So you can get addicted, okay, to this negative cycle because your brain's releasing the dopamine, okay, in the anticipation of the answer and the response. So our brain doesn't give a hoot whether it's a constructive or destructive behavior. It becomes addicted to anything that's there for survival or avoidance of pain or discomfort, but also if there's a gaining of some kind of a pleasure where there's this dialogue going on, then we become highly addicted to that, what I call is a negative doom loop, regardless of who we are, because of the neurological processes that are happening. And so the first part is this awareness of what's going on, like what am I doing? And this is what I'm going to go back to. As soon as you become aware of that pattern, you can say, stop. I am not going to reinforce this negative, destructive pattern because it's not good for me, because you're the one releasing not just the cortisol or epinephrine or adrenaline in that anticipation, but then you are getting that dopamine hit in the anticipation. If you're sharing it with other people and there's group discussions happening, now you've got oxytocin being released as well, which is the bonding neurochemical. So now you have this cacophony of neurochemicals that are creating this addictive behavior that you don't want. And it's this exact same thing that a drug addict says, I know I shouldn't have it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right? It's this crazy, crazy, crazy thing going on in people's brain. And there's actually one solution. And you and I have talked about this because, I've had, sugar addictions most of my adult life. And their only solution is abstinence. It's like, shut it off, done, game over. And so if you want to break the habit, take a digital detox for 2, 3, 4, 5 days and just stay off there and let somebody know that you're doing this, who you love and trust, and say, if something happens that's like critically important for me to know, please tell me. And so get yourself off of that neurological cocktail that's destructive and shut yourself off. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to watch the news, once a day or twice a day. I'm going to not watch or listen or pick up my cell phone and check Facebook and all these communities that I'm a part of. Get back to a normal, constructive, empowering routine as quickly as possible. Activate your Einstein brain to ask yourself, what do I need to do to be mentally safe and focused? What do I need to do to be emotionally safe and comfortable? What do I need to do to make sure that I manage my finances right now so I have safety there?
I think there's an element here it's like very counterintuitive biologically, because we feel like, I think reflexively, intuitively, if you want to use that word, our biological urges are saying, hey, watch the news, pay attention to what's happening, be constantly monitoring this threat that could harm you or your family, and spend all of your mental energy occupied with that. So it's like we have to override what our instincts are telling us to do. But the question is, and I know you've alluded to this through everything you've said, but I think it's worth addressing maybe directly. What are the benefits of not being in a state of fear and anxiety and stress 24/7? Apart from the obvious health benefits of not being stressed, but in terms of how we're living our life, what are the benefits of getting ourselves out of that state into the kind of calm, mindful, aware state that you're describing?
So awareness is what gives us choice. Choice is what gives us freedom. So imagine having more self-confidence. Imagine having more certainty. Imagine your IQ actually rising as a result of it as well. Imagine you feeling in control. Imagine you being able to take deliberate, focused action that's rational versus irrational. Imagine you being able to thrive in this environment instead of just survive. One of the things I've been talking about with a lot of my students who have businesses, Ari, is one of three futures is what I can predict for every single person right now. Future number one is because of this, they are going to be back 3 to 5 years in a variety of different areas of their life, possibly financially, possibly relationship-wise, possibly emotionally. They're going to just get massacred that way. Number two is they're going to be in a constant fight or flight part of their, or fight or flight modality, and they're going to do well, not do well, do well, not do well, do well, not do well in different areas of their life, and they're going to pretty much be where they are right now in 6 months or 12 months. And for a select few people, they will actually rise because of this. They will become mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, relationship stronger than before. And the answer that people are asking, well, how do I thrive instead of survive, is all in your mental and emotional control, and all in what strategies you implement starting right now.
I think what you said, the way I interpret that is stress makes you stupid.
It does.
It does. I mean, you make a lot worse decisions in every area of your life when you're in a stress state, with your relationships, with your career, with your kids, with everything that you're doing in a moment to moment, how you're spending your time, if you're spending it doing something productively or destructively. Are you using this moment in time as we're waiting, you know, and this is a bit of a digression, but a lot of people don't understand that this is not just going to go away after a few weeks of lockdown. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time to come. And this, you know, best case scenario is maybe there's a vaccine that's developed in record time, and the vaccine is really safe and effective somehow, and we all can get vaccinated and saved from this, and we kind of stay in social distancing lockdown mode until that happens for a year or more. Which is itself has a whole bunch of consequences we could talk about. But I think the more likely scenario is we're all basically going to be exposed to this at some point, probably before a vaccine is ever developed. And most likely the majority of the population will get it. So we have this moment in time right now that we can either use to create something. We can use it productively, or it can be destructive. We can be bored. We can sit on our butts, watch Netflix and eat pizza, or we can use this opportunity to work on our health, to learn new skills, to build the next phase of our lives in a state of intention, and you know, really with that vision of what do we want to create, and how can I intentionally spend this time right now to create the vision of my life that I want to create. And I think most people are not doing that. Most people are bored watching TV and addicted to the news, or watching movies on Netflix, eating junk food. So what's your take on that landscape?
So when we're under an enormous amount of mental and emotional stress, the habit part of our brain gets hyperactive, and we will fall to our habitual patterns that are the strongest. And so if we have a pattern of behaving destructively under stress, we will actually exacerbate and strengthen those negative, disempowering, destructive habits, which means in 30, 60, 90 days, you're going to be a mess. You're going to sleep more now, drink more alcohol, not exercise, as much, even if you were just walking from your house to your car, from your car into your office before, and now you're not. You're just going in a retroactive pattern and reinforcing disempowering or destructive habits. However, And this is what happens when forced change in such a magnitude has happened to people. Some people are in shock and denial and disbelief, and so they're going to go to what makes them comfortable first. But they don't understand that in those comfort zones, they become our habit zones, and then our habit zones drive our behavior in our life. And so this is the time to actually stop. Like, slow down to pick up speed is what I teach everybody. Slow down to pick up speed. What does that mean? Slow down and ask yourself a few questions. Am I managing my mindset as best as I can? Yes or no? Am I managing my emotions as best as possible? Yes or no? Are my habits from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, are they constructive and helping me build and live the life of my dreams, or are they destructive right now, moving me away from my life's biggest goals and dreams? Now, if you do this in a calm state, like I said before, with no judgment, blame, shame, or guilt, just a pure state of awareness, then the ones that are serious, that are listening right now, that really want to end up in a better place 90 days from now, here's the question I pose to each one of you. If you wanted to be healthier 90 days from now, do we know how you could be? Yes. If you wanted to have more emotional control so that you're not as stressed out, could you learn how to right now? Yes. If you wanted to achieve any goal, you want to start a business and make some money, you want to have a side hustle because you're working from home right now, is the how to do that available for you right now? Yes. So the question now becomes, are you going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you're mentally, emotionally, and whether it's physically or financially or business-wise, doing the things that you can be doing right now from home? And the answer is going to be yes or no. And then you're going to ask yourself a question. Are you interested in being better off in 90 days, or are you committed? Because if you're interested, you're going to do what's convenient and easy, and you're going to come up with stories and excuses and reasons why you can't. But if you're committed, you will do whatever it takes. You'll upgrade your knowledge, you'll upgrade your skills, you'll change your beliefs, you'll shift your identity, you will do whatever it takes so that 90 days from now, you have a lease on a new life. And it's a decision. And that's why I said awareness is what gives us choice. So let's get you into an aware state and then make a choice that you are going to be better off 100 days from now in 1 or 2 or 3 areas of your life versus worse off.
I think this is a really interesting opportunity to reevaluate our lives. We're all kind of forced, we're stripped of all these things that we would normally have access to. You and I go for walks on the beach all the time, and the beaches are closed, which is, I mean, like closed, like police will kick you off the beach if you're there, just even by yourself, not in a group. Nature trails are closed. The gym is closed. We're at home. Our kids, I mean, I have little kids. You have 2 sons in their 20s. But my kids are home with me. My son can't go to school as he was going to school before. It's given me all these new perspectives to think about. When things go back to normal, how do I want things to be different? Do I want to just go back to the way it was? Or now that there's this kind of opportunity for a reset, how do I want to redesign my life? What's really important to me? How do I want to spend my time? And, one of the things that's become apparent to me is slow down. I was pushing too hard, too much, too fast, and I really had to examine that chronic low-level sleep deprivation because I'm working so hard every day, chronic over-exercise because on top of, which links up with the sleep deprivation, because at the same time as I'm busting my butt and trying to take care of my kids and doing a million things with work projects, more than I can handle every day, and not sleeping enough, and trying to do loads of intense exercise every day, it's just chronically taxing my system. And this right now is the worst time to be doing that because I don't want to be in a chronically overtaxed state in terms of my physiology when I'm exposed to a deadly virus. So I've really had to examine those things. I've been forced to examine those things instead of just keep, continuing to burn the candle at both ends. I've been forced to be like, you know what? If you don't want to be harmed, if you want to live to take care of your kids, you might want to slow down and take care of your own health too, as you're working so hard to put information out to help other people's health. So I've had to do that. I'm curious if you just have any thoughts on that, this opportunity to re-examine what we want in our lives.
Yeah, my first book many years ago that was a New York Times bestseller was Having It All, and when I was younger in my 20s, all I focused on was how do I make money. I want to, like, my parents didn't have any money, and I wanted to just make enough money so I would never have to worry or listen to the screams that I listened to in my house because there wasn't enough money. But I got sick with ulcerative colitis when I was 22. And at the time I was taking 25 cilazapyrin pills a day, 2 betnosol enemas, 1 in the morning, 1 at night, and a sigmoidoscopy looking in the wrong side of me once a month to see where my colon was at. And I was sick. And I was sick because I was so stressed out and not eating healthy and drinking too much alcohol, etc. At 22 years old. And I started to do a lot of research on beliefs and how they drive behavior, and values and how they drive behaviors, and emotions and how they drive behavior. And what I realized was that there were certain things that I wanted to have in my life as my daily routines that I wanted to make decisions from. So I came up with, what are my top 5 values in my life? And value number 1 is my relationship with God. And I'm not religious. I consider myself spiritual. And I consider God the spiritual, or the intelligence in the universe. Number 2 was my health. And so I consider health, I come up with an acronym for myself, SEMP, S-E-M-P, which is like hemp, but just SEMP. And spiritual health is critical for me. Emotional health is critical for me. Mental health is critical for me, and physical health is critical for me. So I asked myself, what can I do every day to work from my highest values to my lowest? So what can I do every day to connect with source, God, whatever it is? What can I do every day, mentally, emotionally, physically? Then the third one is my family. So how do I make sure that my family is in my daily routine and practice? And then number 4 is my contribution to the world, whether it's to my clients, my friends, through my books or courses, etc. And then number 4 is fun and experiences. And so all my decisions are made through that lens every single day, whether I'm in Japan, Alaska, Antarctica, or wherever I am. And I've just gotten into a ritual and a routine to focus on that. Now, with that said, there's 2 things I want to digress to. Is when this pandemic started, I was on flipping high alert as well. I was watching CNN and Fox and reading your stuff and several other experts that I listen to and watch, and I'm communicating. I was exhausted, just exhausted, trying to analyze how severe is this? What's the real risk here? How lethal is it? How contagious is it? What is it, etc. And for probably 3 weeks, I normally exercise every morning. And I want to apologize to you for you exercising so much, because I know one of the reasons you're doing that is you want to look as good as me. And so you're doing it. I wish I looked as good as you. So I got myself off track for about 3 weeks where, I wasn't exercising in the morning, and I was saying, well, I'll exercise tonight at 4 or 5 o'clock where I have a break. And every other day I wasn't exercising. I was like, uh-oh, I'm off of my routine. Mm-hmm. And so I quickly, after 3 weeks, said, no, get right back to this routine, because I know where it was going. And I was waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 hours after I went to bed. I was like, what's going on? I usually sleep 7 or 8 hours a night. And so I realized what was happening, that I was on high overdrive and mental activity. So I got back to a normal routine. And so this is an opportunity, as you said, for everybody to hit the reset button when I was in the Galapagos, there's a hat that I got. It says, evolve or become extinct. And so one of the things I'm teaching all of my clients is, how do you safely become an adaptationist, right? So right now we've got forced adaptation, which we hate, right? We're being forced into behavioral changes. And so the question becomes, how do I take what's happened and how do I use it to get back into alignment with what I really, really want for my life? So we can say, because of this, I can't or I won't do that. Or we say, because of this, this is really a time for me to let's get really healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially. And let's put all of our focus and attention, the Einstein part of our brain, on how we will, because that's really what we want to trade our life for versus why we can't or why we're not.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned another exercise, the flip the switch.
Flip the switch. So I want everybody to imagine for just a moment, think about first, who is your favorite Hollywood actor or actress or producer? Could be any one of those. Ari, do you have a favorite one?
I don't know. The thing that popped into my head just as you were talking was Quentin Tarantino. I don't know if he's actually my favorite, but that was the first name that came to mind.
So let's say, you're at a place for coffee or tea or lunch, and Quentin is sitting at a table around for you. And for those of you that don't like Quentin, don't know him, just choose a Hollywood actor or actress or producer that you like. And imagine, your eyes catch, and then Quentin, to you, Ari, comes over to you and go, hi, I'm Quentin Tarantino. And you go, oh, I know who you are. I actually enjoy your movies. Thank you. And he goes, listen, there's a movie that I am creating, and I think you would be really good for one of the roles, but it would involve you making some shifts from being happy and sad, angry, mad, depressed. Would you consider coming to the studio, and I'll give you an acting coach to help you. Would you consider getting really angry, okay, right now, and then go, it's so funny. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Would you consider doing that if I pay you $1 million?
Yes, I think I would.
So what did I just do and what just happened? What I just did and what just happened is I switched from angry to happy to sad, like I'm crying, in a nanosecond. Well, what if I shared with everybody here that if you're in a depressed state, you can change your state in a nanosecond if you choose to. If you're in an unfocused state, you can change your state into a focused state in a nanosecond. If you're angry, mad, unhappy, stressed, all of those emotions are in you right now. Unless you practice, they will always control you. Unless you practice, they will always control you. Calm and relaxed and focused is within you right now. And so is stressed and angry and anxious, and so is being a victim versus victorious. It's all within you right now. The question is, what are you choosing? Are you choosing to be empowered or disempowered? Are you choosing to be positive or negative? Are you choosing to find out all the things and reasons why you can't, or are you focusing on how you will? Each one of those states is your possible state. You get to choose it versus being a victim of circumstance and what's happening outside, because there's nothing happening outside of your brain. It's all happening in your brain. That's where reality actually happens, not outside.
Mm-hmm. So is this first of all, I love what you just said there. Is this practice something to do on a daily basis, or is it a one-time practice to flip the switch?
If you practice Innercise number 1 and 2, and then you practice number 3, there's a variety of different Innercises. If you would like, I can give you guys access to some brain training audios. There's 9 of them that come with my book that I'll give it to all of your guests who listen to. Well, I will guide them through 9 of them if you'd like. And they could just practice with me as their mental and emotional coach to use visualization and mindfulness and meditation and affirmations and a variety of different evidence-based tools, I'd be more than happy to just give them to everybody. I'll do that for you.
Beautiful. We'll put that on the podcast page for this episode. So it'll be at theenergyblueprint.com/Innercise. That's the best place to put it. So INNERCISE. So theenergyblueprint.com/Innercise. You can get free access to John's Innercise audios. John, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, I have to say, just hanging out with you, since we haven't been able to hang out in 3 or 4 weeks now. Are there any final words that you want to leave people with? I mean, I think everything you've said, this whole podcast is just filled with so much profound advice. But are there any final words that you want to leave people with right now as we're dealing with this pandemic? What do you think is the single most important thing you want people to take from this?
I've been asked that so many times. And number one is, together we will get through this. We are bigger than this. We just need a little bit of time to figure it out. And we've got some of the most brilliant minds and caring and loving hearts in the world working on this. And so we are bigger than this. We will get through this together. And my hallucination and belief is that this will and does show that we are responsible with and for one another, right? If I don't take care of you and you don't take care of me, we're screwed as a species. But if we all rise and lift as we climb and we help each other right now, this is the beauty of all of humanity, right? We are in this together. We are really all one. The illusion that we're separate is just an illusion. And so right now, let's do everything to be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically healthy, and let's help each other get through this together.
I'm like debating in my mind whether I want to leave it there, but there's one thing I'm being called to say, which is a little tricky. You mentioned earlier we're in this state of panic. There's a predator out there. And what's weird about this situation right now is we are now looking at other human beings as the predator or as carriers of the predator. And we're on lockdown. We are scared of contact with other humans. So there's this, on the one hand, this beautiful thing that you just expressed. And on the other hand, the fact that we're like scared of contact with other humans and we are forced into this separation and we've lost community. We've lost, contact with friends. My kids can't go to school and have contact with their friends. We are not hanging out. I'm barely seeing my family. There's all of these degrees of separation now between friends and family and communities. And yet we need to come together. I don't know. I'm sorry for even adding this because I almost wanted to leave it with how profound your last comment was. But I just feel like it's important to mention that the predator is now, like, we're looking at each other as the predator, which is a problem.
It is, and it's also an opportunity. Listen, in the middle of all brain surgery, it looks like the patient is dead. So this is new. What we don't see yet is what's all of the beauty and love and innovation, and what are you going to do when you see your best friends and your family? What kind of a hug will you give them? What kind of oh my God, I missed you so much. Listen, do you remember 9/11? You were a little bit younger, but 9/11, 3,500 families died and devastation beyond here in the United States. And think about how much love and kindness and goodness came from something as horrific. In quantum physics, there's a lot of talk about you cannot have a positron without an electron, you cannot have a good without a bad, you cannot have an up without a down, an inside without an outside. Right now, as we are observing, I'm going to call it the burning building, okay, we can't see beyond that unless we see with our higher level of cortical functioning of how much do I really love and appreciate health? How much do I really love another human being? How precious is life, this gift that we squander sometimes with stupid decisions and not taking care of our physical bodies and our mental health and our emotional well-being, or other people's as well, and how important is right now. So how do we look at what can come out of this that's positive and enlightening and life-giving versus life-taking? We live in a universe, in a world of duality. And while we are hyper-focused on, I'm going to call it the negative, we cannot see the positive. But if we step aside and look for some of the good that's happening, or some of the good that will happen, my belief is if there is equilibrium in the universe, that it doesn't mean that there's balance, which means there's positive and negative right now. I think of it more like harmony, right? And right now we got the trumpets blaring, right? But soon thereafter, we're going to hear the cello or the saxophone or the piano, and we'll look back and go, holy mackerel, because of that, I decided to get healthy. Because of that, I actually, started saving more money so that I'm never feeling this stress financially again. Because of that, I really need to communicate with my partner better. Because of that, I really want to spend more time with my children or mother or father. Because of that, here's all the stuff that I get the opportunity to do now. So I like to shift the frame from the pandemic and pandemic, destructive, negative, disempowering, to pandemic and what can come of this. And guess what we're going to see? Whatever we focus on.
Beautifully said, my friend. Thank you so much. On a personal note, as I tell you all the time, I owe so much to you. I'm so grateful for having you in my life, having you as a mentor / big brother. You're a stud. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with my audience. I really appreciate it, as always, and it was great hanging out with you. For everybody listening, go grab John's book on Amazon, Innercise. You can go to the website, johnneurogym.com is the best place to go.
Myneurogym.com.
Myneurogym.com. And then at theenergyblueprint.com /Innercise, we are going to have this podcast page and the link to download the free Innercise trainings. John, thank you again. This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can go for a walk together like old times here in the near future.
And I couldn't end without telling you how proud I am of you. You are doing so much amazing work in the world, helping so many people. You've got one of the brightest, sharpest brains of anybody that I know. And trust me, I put you through the tests over the years to make sure of that. And you've got a big, huge heart, loving, caring, kind, and you're all about finding the truth and helping as many people as possible. For that, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. The feeling is so mutual. I'm so grateful for you. I love you, brother. Thank you. And for everybody listening, hope you enjoyed this show, and hope you start actually practicing Innercise on a daily basis. This is something that genuinely can transform your life, and there is no better time to get started than right now. Hey there, this is Ari again. One more quick thing before you go. Just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Energy Blueprint, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I will see you again next week.